Hello, this is some guy in Hawaii, and this is a video looking specifically at the food boosting value of three improvements: water wells, granaries, and grocers, which can be co-located with farms. They can be built alongside farms within the same region, and when doing so, give a boost to the production, food production in this case, of each of those farms. The question specifically is, does doing so increase the food production of that region more than just building another farm in that zone? Each improvement provides various perks beyond boosting food production of co-located farms, including in the case of granaries and groceries, some very useful food boosting amenities. We're going to want to build them for that reason alone. This is primarily about boost to farm food production versus building another farm. FYI, as with a lot of games these days, the devs are constantly tweaking things early on. I've had to make adjustments for several changes already while preparing this video. Apologies if any of this stuff is outdated by the time you get it. Now, I've crunched the numbers and run a lot of tests, and the results will surprise you. They definitely surprise me. Given when each improvement comes online, and taking into consideration the regular expected slotting of supplies and upgrading of farms whenever possible, and the odds of getting the game to give us the right geographical setup, none of these, in my opinion, are really better than building another farm. Okay, water wells are definitely not worth it. And even if we encounter the right conditions where building granaries or grocers are more productive than another farm, those conditions are temporary. We will eventually have to move them and replace them with another farm if max productivity is our goal. Now I'm going to show you how I determine this. It does involve some detailed math, a lot more than expected actually. But I will try to explain and show just enough of it to get my points across. But before we go there, an assumption I alluded to earlier that needs to be spelled out. Okay. The assumption is that all farms in a region set up to maximize food production, food or other actually, will be upgraded and slotted with all possible supplies in whatever age we are currently in. Okay, as we play the game and research new techs, we add supplies to and upgrade our farms. We add a plow, then we upgrade to irrigated farms, and we add fertilizer, then we swap out plows for heavy plows, etc. And we do this for every farm in a region if we are in fact trying to maximize their production. We assume those farms are identical. Okay. Yes, there will be times when farms in the same region aren't exactly the same because we don't have enough supplies to slot or upgrade. We have to make more plows or more metal tools or whatever, and because we can only upgrade one farm at a time in a city. But those are normally temporary situations. Okay. These farms should be consistently the same. These assumptions mean that for a co-located improvement to be more valuable than another farm for maximizing production, it needs to not only do better than one more farm, it needs to do better than another farm with all the supplies and upgrades that would normally be already in place when we are finally able to build that co-located improvement. Okay, this is key to the utility of each improvement for maximizing food production in a region full of farms. Okay, let's look at how we analyze this. There's an entire video on farm food production linked in the comments below. It might be helpful to watch that first, but I'm going to summarize farm food production here. Okay, farms harvest food by generating production, which is then divided by the food production requirement, usually 25, to pump out X food per turn. Okay, this graphic diagrams how that production occurs. This is actually a much better, simpler diagram than that used in my video on farm food production. Total production of any farm equals the left half, base production, plus the right half, any added production. Okay, the three correlated improvements we're looking at add production to farms. Okay, so let's look at the baseline production. The first item, harvest production, is simply the city's production value plus 5 points for every farm in the region. If a city production is 20 and there's only one farm in the region, harvest production will be 25. Okay, 2 farms, it will be 30 for each farm, 6 farms, 50 for each farm. Okay, most of the added extras on this side work off of this harvest production figure, including water wells. Okay, region food base is simply the number of apples in the region. Harvest production times region food gives us region food yield, which is the basis for production boost from granaries and grocers. Okay, this multiplies normally between 1 and 4 because 1 to 4 apples. Okay, farm type multiplier increases with the farm type. Okay, basic farms have a modifier of ×1. Upgraded irrigated farms multiply region food yield by 2, and the max upgrade, the industrial farm, multiplies it by 3. Okay, then city production gets added in again, then the last +5 bonus. Okay, this is an oddity which we don't need to get into, although I have a reasonable theory about why it's here. See the farm video. The numbers don't add up without it. Okay, again, that's the left side, the baseline. Anything to the right gets added to the left when applicable. FYI, unlike everything else above and below it, this +5 for each additional farm is automatic. The only way we change this is to build fewer or more farms in the same region. So even though it's added production, we always include it in the subsequent math on this side. It's only sitting over here with the rest of these because that's how the game breaks it out. Okay, we'll come back to this diagram in a minute. A few more things to keep in mind before we dig into the problem. Okay, in both my videos on city growth and how farms provide food, I emphasize the need to create efficient superfood producing regions by choosing regions with high inherent food and a large number of zones, preferably 5 or 6 zones. But while a region can have as few as 2 or as many as 6 zones, 4 is probably the most common. 5 is rarer, 6 is very rare. Okay. By the same token, while high food region or high region food, 4 apples, is ideal, the game doesn't always give us that. Okay, we are often stuck with regions of 3 apples or even 1 or 2, actually even 0 in some cases. Okay. Finally, any zone may contain a resource which can't be farmed efficiently for food, or we may not be able to or want to put a farm on. Okay, said resource may also prevent us from specifically building a water well, granary, or grocer. Okay, most animal and plant resources will only allow us to build farms over them, if even that. Okay, statistically speaking, the more zones in a region, the more likely at least one of those zones will have a resource. So practically speaking, a 5 or 6 zone region may not allow us to work all 5 or 6 zones as we would want. Okay, put all that together. Finding a 6 zone region with 4 food and no problematic resources in any of those zones is a bit like finding a unicorn. Okay, a 5 zone region is more likely but still rare. Okay, if building a co-located improvement is only better than building another farm when we build 4 or especially 5 farms, meaning 5 or 6 zone region, in high food regions with no problematic resources, and we know the odds of getting that combination are very low, the odds are being able to take advantage of that situation are in practice very low. Okay, these are the scenarios we're looking at. We have a bunch of farms in the same region on one side and one less farm plus a co-located improvement on the other. Okay, and again, these farms are all assumed to be identical in setup. Okay, when we look at this, understand that the farms on one side of the diagram are not the same as those directly across on the other side. For each additional farm in a region, this per farm bonus and this +5 bonus per additional farm both go up 5 points, which means the individual farms on this left side are each putting out more production than the individual farms on the right side before we add in any improvement boost. This is why I put numbers on the farms. Okay, this means that in order to be useful, whatever co-located improvement we build on this side must make up for and exceed not only the production of one less farm on the same side, but also the total extra per farm bonuses each farm on the other side gets relative to the other side. Okay, now can any of these do that? Yes, all of them can in specific situations. Okay, I have a bunch of tables like this that compare a co-located improvement's ability to do that with different numbers of farms and different levels of region food. This is for a water well. What are these numbers? What do they mean? How do we get them? Okay, we arrive at these results by taking this formula and solving for every combination of region food and number of farms. We don't plug in city production or CP because while it can vary significantly throughout a game, it's always the same everywhere in a city, whatever calculation uses it. So we leave it a variable, which simplifies the math. Its actual value is not important except in specific situations I'll explain in a minute. On one side of each table is the total production of all farms in the region for 2 to 6 farms for a given level of region food. On the other side is the total food production when substituting a water well for one of those farms. Okay, whichever side puts out more production, both CP and the raw number, is in bold and green. Sometimes though it's not clear which is greater because one side has a higher CP multiplier, but the other has the higher straight production number. This means there's a crossover point where they are both equal depending upon city production. If city production is low enough, one side wins. If high enough, the other side wins. Okay. A number on the far right of each is the minimum city production required to make a co-located improvement a better choice. If I still show one side or the other in bold or green, that's because the size of the city production favors one or the other. Some city production numbers are reasonable and some are not. What's reasonable? Well, it depends where we are age-wise in the game, and more importantly, city tier and modifiers for city production. In general, the later the age, the bigger the city, although cities established later will be smaller and still need to grow. Okay. The devs recently reduced city baseline production significantly. It used to go up a small but increasing amount each tier. At tier 1 it was 2, at tier 22 it was 28. Now it appears to be the same as city tier. The only other things that affect city production significantly are happiness and certain government policies, and happiness is the bigger, it can double the base. Any other mods like supplies or amenities to increase production in small amounts, typically 2 or points or less. Okay, the bigger the city, the higher the baseline production, the less those small boosts affect overproduction, though the letter can get up. Okay. So a good rule of thumb is, assuming maximum happiness, take this number and have it to get a rough idea of what the minimum tier a city needs to be to make this the better choice. Okay, if I've yet to get a city past tier 29. But I've heard of people getting their cities to tier 40 plus. Okay, with that in mind, any CP requirement greater than, say, 80 is problematic. Okay, remember though that larger cities don't just happen; they take time to grow. If an improvement is only effective during an early age, but also requires a minimum tier that we aren't likely to get a city to until a much later time period, then the improvement is not really effective. Build another farm. Okay, a green number means that that level of city production CP or better is doable given when the improvement is viable. Red means no, yellow means maybe. It's high but not unreasonably so. Okay. The tables show that water wells can overcome the disadvantage of lower per farm bonuses versus building on farms if region food is low enough and the number of farms is high. It gets harder the higher the region food, because the boost from the water well is based on harvest production, which for a given number of farms remains the same even as region food goes up. Okay, 1 food region, not bad. We can do it with a 4-zone region. 2 food region, we really need at least a 5-zone region to make it work. 3 or 4 food regions, it's definitely better to build another farm. But there's a couple things we've yet to consider. Water wells come online when we research irrigation in the Iron Age. If we research animal husbandry in the Ancient Age, and we should have crafted and equipped plows in every one of these farms before the Iron Age. If we've done that, the tables look like this. For a 1 food region, a water well is really only better in a 4-zone region if city production is at least 56, meaning a maximum base in city tier around 28, which is really too high at this point in the game. Okay, 5 or 6 zones would work, but again, that's 5 or 6 zones. For a 2 food region, only a 6-zone region favors the water well combo. Okay, given how things are trending, I'm not going to bother with 3 and 4 food regions. Okay, the other thing to consider is that when we research irrigation and get access to water wells, we also get access to irrigated farms. And the moment we upgrade all these farms with plows to irrigated ones, water wells aren't even in the running anymore. Okay, these are the tables that really count, and these say a water well is pretty much never better than another farm. Does this mean we don't build water wells ever? No, I wouldn't go quite that far. Water wells do increase city health by 10, which I believe is a recent patch, as I can recall it being only +3, and we can add an expert to increase it another 5. Beyond that, one might think it would still be useful in boosting the production of non-food producing farms, like those harvesting spice or flowers or horses, etc. Except that the same rules apply. Building another farm and another will do more than a water well if one slots a plow and upgrades to them all to irrigated farms promptly, regardless of what we are farming. Okay. What about granaries and grocers? They don't add bonus harvest production. They add bonus region food yield, which is harvest production times region food, the number of apples in a region. Okay. This means that unlike water wells, whose added production boost per farm for a given number of farms stays the same regardless of region food, granary and grocer added production per farm increases with increasing region food. What do those tables look like? Granaries first. Granaries are more viable the more region food we have. Since we unlock granaries in the Ancient Age with grain storage, we don't have to worry about boosts from upgraded farms, irrigated farms, for a while. But again, animal husbandry and plows are unlockable in the same age, so we need to start with adding plows to our farms. A 1 food region doesn't work. 2 food, we need 6 zones. 3 and 4 food, we need at least 5 zones. There's a window where it can work, but again, much like water wells, we need a lot of luck. We need 5 and 6 zone regions with at least 3 food. Once we upgrade to irrigated farms, it's no contest, which makes sense because we're multiplying the output of the individual farm, but the granary contribution remains the same. Okay. Granaries have an early game window that's only really viable if we drag our heels, crafting and starting plows, and or we get lucky with region size and food. Does that mean we don't build granaries ever? No. Granaries add +5 city health, which is not that much in the long run, but they also craft the food boosting amenity grain store. We're going to want to churn those out even if the granary isn't adding production to co-located farms. Also, the same caveats that apply to water wells when using them to boost non-food farm production apply to granaries. Okay. What about grocers? Grocer boosts are double that provided by granaries, which sounds encouraging, but of course we need to consider that grocers can't be unlocked until we research brewing in the early Middle Ages, and by that point we should only be looking at irrigated farms with both a plow and fertilizer slotted. What does that look like? Grocers are better than water wells and granaries. It's actually viable. We should note, however, that again it's dependent on good region food and only with higher numbers of farms. Region 1 food, it doesn't work. Region 2 food, only with 5 farms and city production of at least 66. So a city tier of around 33. So not really. 3 region food, 27 production is quite reasonable, but requires 5 farms, a 6-zone region. 4 farms only work with city production of at least 75. City tier around 38. So again, not really. Okay. It's only with 4 region food that a 4 farms plus a grocer setup is better than 1 more farm, as long as city production is at least a relatively reasonable 44. Okay, 5 farms work with only 8 city production, but again that requires a 6-zone region. There are 2 or 3 more situations we need to consider. This is what happens if we upgrade to heavy plows in the following age, the high Middle Ages. Things get worse. Only 4 food and maybe 5 or 6 regions can work, and the city production costs go up. Not looking good. But then if we skip ahead to the Renaissance and get steel, we can craft indoor stoves. An indoor stove, when slotted as an amenity, increases city region fertility. What does that mean? It means every region in the city gets an extra apple. 0 food becomes 1, 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 3, 3 becomes 4, and 4 becomes 5. Okay. What does a 5 food region with all irrigated farms slotted with heavy plows and fertilizer look like? It looks like this. This is the best we've seen so far with a grocer, but again, we still limited to 5 and 6 zone regions. Skip ahead to the age of enlightenment and industrialization, we can craft and slot fuel, and again, things get worse for the grocer. Once we get to the machine age and we upgrade to industrial farms and craft and slot tractors, grocers are no longer the best choice by a long shot. And of course, grocers also have the same issues when used to boost production of farms in a region not dedicated to max food production as water wells and granaries. Okay. Regardless of its farm food boosting abilities, grocers can craft 3 goods that can be slotted as food boosting amenities: both preserved food and dried food goods plus 50 city food, and canned food plus 100 city food. Actually, the grocer is the only improvement that can craft canned food, so we're definitely going to want to build one somewhere in every city just for that. Grocers can also provide a big boost to city happiness when co-located with farms of any type. Grocers provide a happiness boost for every farm in the region twice. Once here, 10 per farm, and again here, 1 per farm. Okay. This grocer with 4 farms is currently increasing city happiness by 44. Okay. This was actually nerfed by a recent patch. The second bonus used to be +5 instead of the current +1. Either way, it can be a big deal. Happiness increases production across the board, including, among other things, food production. Okay, grocers have these same issues when used to boost their production of farms in a region not dedicated to max food production as for water wells and granaries. If we do that, however, we can still get the happiness boost and leave maxing out food production to regions with all farms. Okay, so what's the verdict? Unless my math is wrong, and I've checked and checked and checked, but I could still have messed up. Unless my math is wrong, water wells are clearly not worth co-locating, but realistically, neither are granaries or groceries unless we get really lucky, meaning 5 or 6 zone regions with 4 food and no problematic resources. And even if we do get lucky, both granaries and groceries still have a window of time in which they're the better choice, meaning even then, if we are serious about maximizing production, we will eventually want to move those improvements, demolish them, and build them elsewhere, and replace them with another farm. Okay. Now, I am always on the lookout for regions with lots of zones and high food. Even when they do show up, however, trying to squeeze extra production out of them with a co-located improvement within a specific time will, improvements I'll eventually have to move anyway, is too much micromanagement for my taste. Now, you might feel otherwise. You don't have the information to make your own informed choices. Okay? Given these results, if I were the devs, I'd take a closer look at how the production boosting aspects of these improvements work. Okay? And that's it. If you like this kind of content, like, comment, and subscribe to see more. Stay safe, and thanks for watching.